going on, everyone, and welcome to my second of 3 wooden roller coaster countdown videos. Today I'm going to count down my top 15 roller coasters that I have ridden that are designed by either Custom Coasters International or the Gravity Group. These two companies have a bit of a linked history and have very similar traits, which is why I'm grouping these together. CCI was formed in 1991, and from then to the time the company declared bankruptcy in 2002, they had designed 34 wooden roller coasters around the world. Right after, the top group of designers from the defunct CCI went on to form the Gravity Group, and since then have designed almost 30 roller coasters around the world. Some of the attributes you can typically find on CCI and Gravity Group wooden roller coasters include excellent pacing, strong profiled airtime hills, and probably the most defining feature of a lot of these rides, the inclusion of strong lateral forces. On CCIs, these are pronounced typically from little to unbanked curves in portions of track. On Gravity Groups, however, these can be felt often on 90-degree banked or greater turns. Gravity Group roller coasters also have rides that feature inversions. On CCIs, most occasions the trains come from Philadelphia toboggan coasters. On Gravity Groups, those rides will feature either PTC trains or lighter Timberliner trains which have a curved lap bar designed for comfort. With all that said, let's begin the countdown. Heading down south to the stacked roller coaster state of Missouri, here's the Boss from Six Flags St. Louis. This massive creation from CCI is a terrain coaster that traverses the park's hills. The strong point of the Boss has to be its sense of speed, particularly after the first drop through the mid-course brake run. Unfortunately, the brake run severely slows down the train, reducing the speed a bit for the second half, which has a nice mix of airtime hills and lateral forces. One negative, at least to me, about the Boss is its use of Gerstlauer trains as opposed to PTC trains, which I find those a little more comfortable. I would understand if Six Flags hired Rocky Mountain Construction to convert this ride into a hybrid, but I personally hope this ride lasts for the foreseeable future. Staying in the Midwest and heading up to Wisconsin is Cyclops from Mount Olympus. Unlike the Boss, Cyclops is a CCI on a much smaller scale. While Cyclops doesn't have the sense of high speed the Boss has, it does provide two outstanding airtime moments. The first is a very small hill that runs directly next to one of the footpaths. The other is on a larger drop towards the end of the ride. At one point, Cyclops featured an additional car on the train, and because of how violent that last airtime moment was, you had to be 18 years old to ride in it. Even without that additional car, that moment is strong enough to put this ride on this list. Many of you will not be happy to see this ride this slow, but here's Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. This was a milestone coaster credit of mine, and I had built up a lot of hype from people's reviews of it. However, for me, I found it to be a bit disappointing. I never rode this ride prior to the Great Coasters International retracking, but GCI did do a good job making the ride smooth. I was a bit let down by the airtime, which wasn't really pronounced except for the night rides. The helix at the end, which also was hyped up, did have decent lateral forces, but they were nowhere near as forceful as some rides higher on this list. Maybe I'll make a trip out to California to give this ride another shot, but in terms of wooden coasters, this is one of my most overrated coasters in my opinion. Conversely, the first of many Indiana coasters on this list I find to be underrated. This is Cornball Express from Indiana Beach. Cornball Express is another smaller scale CCI. However, the PTC trains feature buzz bars, which are single position restraints that lock inches above your legs. Because of this, there are large quantities of airtime which occur in several spots on the ride, mainly from drops that send you down towards the lake below. Also, because it is compact in nature, the result are some serious lateral forces. The helix towards the end of the ride I find to be more forceful than the one on Ghost Rider. This ride exists in the middle of cornfields at a bit of a quirky boardwalk, but it is worth going out of your way to visit Indiana Beach just for Cornball Express. Just a few hours down the road, you'll find the Raven at Holiday World. This former Golden Ticket Award winner greets guests at the first ride they see entering the park. Raven starts off with a section of airtime hills before it takes a picturesque helix adjacent to a lake. Once you exit the helix, you climb to another drop, and it's at this point the pacing goes out of control. Intense lateral forces bombard you until you reach the brake run. I think since the most recent retracking Holiday World has performed on the Raven, it has made the pacing in that last section that much more intense. This may be the smallest wooden coaster at Holiday World, but even today, this ride still means business. Heading back up north to another Midwest park, this time we have Shivering Timbers from Michigan's Adventure. This park is one of the smaller parks in the Cedar Fair chain, but turning into the parking lot with Shivering Timbers dominating the sightline makes for some anticipation. Featuring an out-and-back layout, there might not be another CCI that provides more airtime, with some of those hills providing strong floater. The lateral forces also come into play on both the turnaround as well as the finale helix. Michigan's Adventure has also performed a recent retracking, which has made portions of this ride quite smooth. Of any rides on this list, if airtime is your favorite element, then this ride is for you. Heading to the East Coast is the CCI I need to re-ride the most. This is Boulder Dash at Lake Compounds. The country's oldest amusement park is also home to a 5-time Golden Ticket Award winner for Best Wooden Roller Coaster. Boulder Dash is one of the great feats of engineering in the amusement park industry, as it is built and traverses along a mountain. The outward journey hugs the mountain and provides a nice mix of lateral forces from the quick turns and airtime hills. Once you turn back heading for the station, the ride has a long stretch of negative G filled hills. The pacing of this ride is terrific and the setting can't be beat. Unfortunately, the rides above this are just a little stronger overall in my opinion, but I definitely need to make a return trip to reevaluate Boulder Dash. This next coaster is actually not located in the United States. This ride is in France, and that ride is Tonnerre 2 Zeus at Parc des Streaks. Originally named Tonnerre des Zeus, this was a CCI that recently got overhauled by the Gravity Group, in which they retracked and reprofiled much of the layout. What also makes this ride unique is that you have the ability to ride this in the final car backwards. This previously was an upcharge, but you can now request it on any ride. While this ride is decent facing forward, getting yanked over the first drop and going through the copious amounts of airtime going backwards is awesome. Plus, even with the Timberliners, I actually found this ride to be fairly smooth. While I wish I could have tried this in its former CCI form, I was not disappointed to make this refurbished gem my latest milestone credit. The intensity begins to ramp up now with the next coaster, Legend from Holiday World. There might not be another coaster I've ridden that has stronger lateral force than the Legend. Right off the bat, laterals can be felt on the curved first drop that shoots you out towards the water park. The lateral force theme continues with a turnaround by one of the water slides. There really is only one airtime moment on the Legend, but it's a sharp drop after the turnaround. You then go into a mess of turns until the insane double helix appears. That element just forces you to the left side of the train with such ferocity. Resisting that force will make you exhausted once the train exits the helix. A final few turns, including a sharp 180-degree turn, returns the train back to the station. There is no CCI I have ridden that takes the energy out of you like the Legend does. The best CCI I've ridden resides down south, which is Rampage at Alabama Adventure. What makes Rampage so good is the variety of elements as well as the setting. Rampage is another terrain coaster that winds alongside of a hill. What this ride does better than any other coaster on this list is the first drop. Especially if you ride in the back, riders get absolutely thrown out of their seat, which starts the ride off with a bang. Great pacing throughout facilitate nice airtime hills and forceful lateral turns at every turnaround. There was one really bad pothole on the ride at the time I rode this back in 2020. However, Alabama Adventure is owned by the Cook family, which also own Holiday World, and if they take care of Rampage like they take care of the Holiday World Woodies, then Rampage is something special. Now we get to the elite gravity groups, and here we start with Boardwalk Bullet from Kima Boardwalk. This is one of the most impressive boardwalk coasters out there, taking a high-speed and high-intensity wooden coaster and cramming it into a small plot of land. This ride starts with a bang, with a twisted drop followed immediately by two rapid turns, providing crazy lateral force. The rest of the ride consists of solid pacing, with a few airtime moments yanking the train over the hills. As a result, the ride speed does let up a little bit from time to time, but in general, this ride packs a serious punch and is a spectacle along the Texas Gulf Coast. From one large body of water to another, up north along Lake Erie you will find Ravine Flyer 2 from Waldameer. This gravity group is a little more spread out than Boardwalk Bullet, but the pacing feels just as strong on this ride. Their large curved first drop overlooking Lake Erie shoots you down and onto a bridge crossing the adjacent roadway. After turning around and crossing the airtime-filled bridge again, the rest of the ride is filled with plenty of airtime moments. Unlike Boardwalk Bullet, the hills are smaller, which help keep the speed up better, and thus, the airtime in general is stronger. I cannot commend the small park of Waldameer enough for helping bring this wonderful coaster into the world. A coaster many find too rough to enjoy that I love is Hades 360 at Mount Olympus. This ride has a bit of an asterisk, as at the time of recording, I've only ridden this once, and it was early in the day, but I rode it towards the back and I didn't find the roughness intolerable. Due to the size and speed of Hades, I think the roughness just adds to the intensity level. The first drop shooting under the parking lot into darkness really enhances the experience. The barrel roll and tight turns also really pop on this ride. While I certainly need to get back up to Mount Olympus to give this more rides, from this one ride I had, this is as close to insanity as I've gotten on a wooden roller coaster. Another ride with a rough reputation comes in the second spot, but this is one that I absolutely love, and that is Mind Blower at Fun Spot Kissimmee. This ride to me combines some of the best of both worlds from Hades 360 as well as Boardwalk Bullet. This is another tight, compact ride, but the elements Mind Blower goes through are much more aggressive. The pacing on this might be the best of any wooden roller coaster I've ridden, with how quickly it navigates the tight turns. The airtime, especially on the double down, is excellent. The tight turns and overbank also provide some excellent laterals. I personally have not ridden Mind Blower since Rocky Mountain Construction installed some of its 208 track, but from my 2 visits to Fun Spot, I find Mind Blower to be nothing short of sensational. And taking the top spot of this list of CCIs and gravity groups, this should come as no surprise if you know me, this is the Voyage from Holiday World. Maybe it's the fact it was the first coaster to really open my eyes of what roller coasters, especially wooden ones, can do. Or maybe it's partially due to home state bias. but Voyage is as close to a perfect coaster as I've seen. Between the copious amounts of floater and ejector airtime, the strong lateral forces, and the aggressive nature of this ride, particularly in the second half, Voyage is something special that we may never see something like this built again. Holiday World also can't get enough credit for how well they take care of not only this masterpiece, but all 3 of their wooden roller coasters. It's one of the reasons why, to this point in my coaster riding career, I haven't found a roller coaster better than this one. And that concludes my top 15 wooden roller coasters from CCI or the Gravity Group. The coasters from these designers have become some of my favorites, and every one listed in this video I find extremely enjoyable. While I do think there probably isn't a better Gravity Group than the Voyage, I do think there are several countries outside the United States that could lay claim to the second best Gravity Group in the world. If you haven't, check out my last video where I count down the GCIs I have ridden in the United States. My next video will count down the wooden coasters from all other designers, but until then, have a great rest of the day and take it easy.